Boys, the world is ending. Let's do some drugs. Before we get started today, there's a lot of different kinds of drugs, and we're going to be focusing mainly today on hallucinogens and marijuana. So we're not quite so cool as to be a pro-fentanyl podcast, and we're not going to get into like opiates and stuff like that. We're going to keep the conversation limited to some recent news around psychedelics and THC. Let's start off with a question. Do you think hallucinogens and marijuana are always harmful, or do you think they could be helpful for certain people?
Clearly the latter. Science says they're helpful to certain people, so I feel like we should believe them unless you have a strong reason not to.
No, I mean, I don't have a strong reason. I will say that psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, Ibogaine, which is, until this week I had never heard of, but is apparently a hallucinogen made from a shrub that grows in Africa. News to me. And THC, which I have heard of, that's marijuana. Mary Jane, West Texas, lazy smoke. I don't know.
Confusing weed with oil.
There's so many fun nicknames for weed. I thought I could freestyle it, but I failed.
That was like the Beverly Hillbillies intro.
Hit me with some good weed euphemisms.
I find it funny when they call it Kush, because the Hindu Kush mountains are called that because that means Hindu killer. And that was because the Mughals lost so many slaves when they were forcing all the Hindus over the mountains to go be slaves.
So that's just like talking about how freaking dank these nugs are. It's like killing the people traveling over the mountains. I guess I don't really understand. Anywho, the reason I asked it in such a sort of leading way, that question, if they're always harmful, because things are Schedule 1 according to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, they currently have no accepted medical use and have a high potential for abuse. According to law enforcement, there's no potential medical use for these drugs, which is...
For marijuana, that's ridiculous, right? Like, well-established.
I mean, it's ridiculous for all three of these. There's many studies, despite the illegality of the substances. There are international studies and domestic studies that show they are useful for things like pain relief, depression, addiction to other substances,
songwriting,
PTSD.
So yeah, these are Schedule 1 drugs. Psych! Not anymore! At least one of these drugs has been moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, or that's the plan at least. Do you know which one off the top of your head?
Weed, I hope.
Yeah, it's weed. So recently, the Trump administration moved to reschedule marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which will not technically legalize marijuana under federal law, but it will provide some tax relief to marijuana companies. So currently, if you're a company that sells marijuana in the United States, even though it's legal in certain states, you can't access traditional banks because they are subject to, I think, like FDIC requirements, and that puts them under the sort of federal interstate commerce umbrella. And because of that, you can't bank your weed business.
I want to make a small note here. Unless you're a Mexican cartel, in which case hit up HSBC. They'll have no trouble taking your money.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, this is all like the technical legal stuff. Obviously, criminals are fine. They'll just do it anyways and like get away with it and pay off big bribe. That's our country in a nutshell. I thought this story was kind of interesting because my memory is fried for reasons and
totally unrelated to the subject.
Totally unrelated. Yeah. And I had this vague memory of like, didn't Biden already do this?
No, right? That was just part of the Farm Bill, was like a legalized hemp, right?
No, actually, he did, in fact, start the process of rescheduling marijuana. This recent announcement by the Trump administration is just a continuation of Biden-era policy, which was started in 2024. They started the process of rescheduling marijuana, but the DEA had not completed its review by the time Joe Biden's term ended the following year.
So it took them 2 years to figure out that weed is less dangerous than heroin?
Yeah, I mean, top minds were were on the case. I think maybe they got distracted. That's a potential side effect of marijuana use.
They were field testing it.
Yeah, I was thinking they were doing like research,
Yeah, I've done some marijuana investigations in my time as well, and I found they didn't make me especially productive either. He also did some other stuff. This is Biden we're talking about again. He, in 2021, pursued cannabis decriminalization, and he made a big show of pardoning thousands of people convicted with marijuana possession in 2022, which is of note. There were 0 pardons that resulted in less jail time because of these pardons. No one was a federal inmate at the time. So I guess everyone pardoned was on probation or got their record expunged.
I don't know. What's the point of pardoning thousands of people if they're not going to join your little like paramilitary group?
I know, he really messed up, dude. He was probably sampling this medical marijuana and forgot about it, dude. That's why they call him Sleepy Joe, right?
I mean, that explains his debate performance. Just like, wouldn't that be like a cruel irony of history if Biden was just stoned off his rocker?
He should have gone the Bill Clinton route, dude. He just don't inhale.
All right, so that's weed. But I also wanted to talk about Ibogaine. I guess I went over it a little bit, but have you ever heard of Ibogaine before?
I kind of assumed that this was the poison in Princess Bride, but I think that's actually Ibogaine.
No. Ibogaine is a hallucinogenic drug derived from a shrub in Africa. I found this study, a 12-month observational study in New Zealand, that found that pretty remarkable results, actually, for treatment of opioid addiction. This is from the study. A single Ibogaine treatment reduced opioid withdrawal symptoms and achieved opioid cessation or sustained reduced use in dependent individuals as measured over 12 months. That's pretty crazy. A single treatment was able to achieve these results over a 12-month period.
Given how much conservatives cry about even stuff like free needle exchanges, I don't think they'll be willing to pay for sending opiate addicts to New Zealand for 12 months to do hallucinogenics.
Honestly, I'm kind of with them on that one because I think there are more cost-effective measures than sending them to New Zealand.
Although, if they need to do another study, I could volunteer.
Yeah.
I would go to New Zealand for 12 months.
You're the control group, I guess, because you're not an opioid addict.
Well, that's true.
I guess the control group would be opioid addicts that they just give sugar pills. That's kind of messed up. I feel like that should be against the rules.
Maybe it is.
Well,
it probably is.
It's an observational study, so they were treating people. I don't think they necessarily had a control group, but I don't know all the details of the study. What I do know is that this 2017 study was influential in New Zealand, and their health department, or however they do things there, parliament, maybe they ask a Kiwi probably. Or whatever.
Sheep.
They slaughter a sheep and read the entrails, and new laws are passed, and they legalized Ibogaine via prescription. Yeah, further research unlocked with that.
Lots of discovery. People are discovering shit up and down New Zealand.
So, yeah, this is cool, and it makes us seem a little behind the times, and Trump appears to be moving us, more within the realm of current scientific understanding.
Well, in some
question.
ways.
So you were mentioning in that study, that it improved the withdrawal symptoms, but there was something else that made me think that you were saying it also got rid of the addiction itself.
Achieved opioid cessation.
So that means it makes you unaddicted?
Yeah. I didn't write it down here, but there was a significant.
Danny had the white flash of bullshit.
It refers to the process of stopping the use of opioid medications, which can lead to withdrawal symptoms.
See?
Got it. So, okay. Yeah.
I know what the word cessation means.
Yeah, but it's all medical mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being a specific term, basically.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you were right.
And also sustained reduced use. Or some other information in that study about increased family retention or something like that. It was basically saying that their relationships with their families improved and they had better professional lives because, all the things that happen if you aren't doing fent under a bridge. Anyways, this is something that the Trump administration is pursuing. Trump held a press conference the other day where he was singing the praises of Ibogaine. Fellow podcaster Joe Rogan was apparently influential in this decision by the Trump administration, showed up for the press conference and everything.
Politically homeless Joe Rogan?
Well,
hanging out with the president?
Trump kind of ran on, on a few things, but one is sort of representing the opioid-addicted population, right? He's going to close the borders and lock up immigrants so that they would stop bringing fentanyl. And
is that what fentanyl addicts want? Is less fentanyl? I bet they don't want that, dude.
I think actually fentanyl addicts often do want less fentanyl being available. I think fentanyl is just one of those drugs where you have it once and your life is kind of ruined, and you'd really give anything for there not to be fentanyl around. But you're addicted to it.
Want is a complicated feeling.
Yeah. Anyways, some interesting stuff from this executive order. The FDA is moving to fast track Comp 360, which is artificial psilocybin, magic mushrooms, for depression treatment. Trump was very vocal about Ibogaine in this press conference, but the FDA is not moving forward with Ibogaine research or rescheduling. It's, I don't know. It's just like an oversight. Maybe someone gave him, I don't know, he just disconnected from the actual doings of his department.
It is a little weird that they're calling this rescheduling. The main meaning of schedule is like the set of things that you're going to do this week, right? Like mushrooms on Tuesday, weed on Wednesday, but they're rescheduling. So they're going to do weed on Thursday, I guess.
Yeah, I would think that you'd want to be on Schedule 1. That's where the most fun stuff is. You want to be on the A plan.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird government-y word for like a list, right? It's like a list.
What are your opinions on drug legalization in America?
I think they should probably all be legal, because society should provide a good enough life for you that you don't just want to do drugs all the time. And if we can't, then at least let them go out the easy way instead of just dying on the streets of being cold.
This is like pro-drug legalization to the point of legalized euthanasia is how far you're going on this one.
Euthanasia should be legal, but it's kind of unrelated. I just mean happy people don't become heroin addicts, right? So if our society sucks so bad that such huge portions of our society just want to live as a heroin addict on the street, it says a lot about how sick our society is. So
I guess I get what you're saying, but sometimes we all get sad, and there is something to be said about the availability of heroin as an option if you are sad. People get sad and take their own lives, but we don't encourage that, right? So we don't, and I don't think we would encourage people to seek out heroin as a way to relieve their depression.
No, that was never what I was saying. What I was saying is society should try and provide a good life for people. And if we fail at that so badly, we should at least not make them even more miserable when they try to escape, by making it so hard to get things to numb the pain.
Yeah, I think that, Danny's view is a little extreme, but I would not go that far at all. But I think clearly, even just by the definition that you gave of what Schedule 1 means, marijuana has clearly been overly criminalized for a long time. And if there are medical uses for these things, it seems like they're not taking it off the list of bad stuff, right? They're just okay, it's on the list of controlled stuff. I guess you're still not allowed to grow magic mushrooms or African shrubs, but you could actually get a prescription for them eventually or something is what this rescheduling means. So yeah, that just seems very reasonable and whatever, conservative in a sense.
These aren't just harmless fun times like cigarettes and alcohol.
That's another thing about marijuana and magic mushrooms is we have things that are demonstrably worse for you that are legal, gambling. And that's just what we've built our society around. I guess you could say the same of alcohol and to a lesser extent cigarettes. But yeah, so that's us. That's our take. What do Americans think about drugs?
Wait, go back. Hold on. What's your take, Phil? You had us say our takes, but you dodged out.
Oh no, I'll get. I want to reserve my take for when I have example and evidence, so I'll sound much smarter. No, I'm just kidding. I think that I generally agree with you, Danny. Probably closer to David, though, in terms of application. But in general, I think that when it comes to questions like addiction and the harms of drugs. These are medical questions that shouldn't be handled by law enforcement. These should be handled by the medical system. And that what law enforcement interfaces with people who are on drugs or, suffering from the side effects of drugs, maybe out on the streets because of drugs, the outcomes, like the people who are now interfacing with law enforcement officers, are generally pretty bad. Can lead to some other life-ruining stuff, like getting thrown in jail and getting the shit kicked out of you. Yeah, shot in the back. But that's us. So let's talk about what Americans in general think. I got some things from drugabusestatistics.org.
Sounds legit.
It's got a .org. I don't know. Let us know in the comments if it's legit to drugabusestatistics.org.
The YouTube comments they will adjudicate the legitimacy.
Yeah, do your own research. Over half of people aged 12 or older have used illicit drugs in their life at least once.
12 is a funny cutoff for
it. Yeah, I was thinking that too. It's like, okay, yeah, what about like between 12 and 18?
I don't know, but I think the cutoff is there because a lot of the people who do start using illegal drugs start kind of early, but I don't know. Maybe it was just the sample size where they were able to get the data. But that's in terms of like what people think of drugs. I mean, they're actually doing them at a fairly high rate. It's a little over half of people.
This is have tried any illicit drug anytime in their life.
Yeah.
For a 12-year-old, does alcohol count as an illicit drug?
I mean, I guess it would. It is a drug, and it would be illicit for them.
It scares me that you're a parent asking us this. Shouldn't you already know?
In terms of just asking a Gallup poll, Americans are generally in favor of marijuana legalization. It hit a high in 2023 where 70% of respondents said they were in favor of marijuana legalization.
Pretty absurd that we had to wait for Trump to get it done, dude. The president could just do this at any time with a snap of his fingers, and none of the Democrats did it, dude. It seems like such an easy win.
Well, yeah, so that's the thing, right? Is it a snap of your fingers thing? Because Biden did start it. It did start the review in 2024 and did some decriminalization sort of stuff. But I think
so it took 2 years. It
could have been
done
if he
faster. Started in 2022. He could have been done during his term. Or he could have gotten his buddy Barry to take care of it during one of his 2 terms, especially since Obama admitted to smoking weed himself, dude. So he was like having the government throw people in jail for weed when he smoked weed. It seems pretty hypocritical, dude.
Well, I mean, we'll get back to it, but yes, I completely agree. I think it is absurd. So yeah, like people are generally in favor of this. What happens if we decriminalize drugs? I think like a really great example of this is the Portuguese example. In 2001, Portugal decriminalized basically all drugs. Like that includes like, the really nasty stuff like heroin and amphetamines and stuff like that.
I assume it's a wasteland now, right? Mad Max style?
Well, in the immediate aftermath of this legislation passing, drug consumption did go up briefly, but after that brief increase where people were excited and they kind of like went to Portugal to do drugs, the rate of drug use in Portugal declined over time. Drug consumption has declined among 15 to 24-year-olds in Portugal since 2001. This has also reduced the infection rate by HIV of needle users in Portugal, because with the legalization comes a safer environment for needle exchange, and like people are less worried that they're going to face serious consequences if they're discovered doing drugs. Generally speaking, despite drugs being legal in Portugal, they completely lap us in health outcomes.
They got socialized medicine there, right?
Well, socialized medicine and socialized a lot of things, but they have lower crime rates.
I mean, every developed country has lower crime rates than us.
Yeah, no, we're ranked pretty highly on crime and violent crime.
USA, number 1.
Yeah, wow. Well, in gun ownership, we're number 1. Yeah, it's 88.8 per. That can't be right.
No, it is. It's
88.8 guns per 100 residents.
Yeah,
you're talking about.
It's just people owning a lot of guns, right?
Yeah. It's like it's the Pareto principle or whatever. Like 10% of people who drink alcohol consume 90% of the alcohol that's consumed or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Like Portugal has us beat on cannabis use, weirdly.
Like they have a speed, like they smoke more of it or less of it?
We're actually, of all countries, we have the highest rate of cannabis use, despite the fact that it is a Schedule 1 drug in the United States.
Pretty stressful being an American, dude.
13%.
Right. I think like the fact that America has bigger cultural challenges, it seems, than Portugal makes this incremental step make sense to me. I think that, I mean, I'm curious how much funding went to the healthcare treatment side when they passed this law, and like, could anything comparable plausibly be accomplished here? Or, anyway, look, it could be. But I guess the point is, like, if you don't pair these things together, then are those benefits still there? An important question and an experiment that you might not want to run on yourself,
I mean, well, so, okay, I feel like I should bring up that Oregon decriminalized drugs, basically, but it did not go as smoothly as Portugal, and it's been undone recently.
Were you going to get into that, Phil, or did you?
I actually was, yeah. This was my counterexample. Generally speaking, drug legalization has a positive effect on violent crime and is the case in many places. When Washington and Colorado legalized marijuana, it did have a suppressing effect on their crime rate. And for reasons that make a lot of sense, I mean, obviously, if it's not a crime, you're not a criminal for using it. That makes sense. That's one way it reduces crime.
Right. Make everything legal. On purge night, the crime rate goes way down.
Yeah, exactly. People don't like buying from drug dealers. If they could get their products fast, convenient, and safe, they would rather do that. So the less...
I don't know. It kind of takes the fun out of it. I mean, I feel like this is why the rates went down in Portugal, is because it's like, what's the point if I don't even get shanked in the back of a 1985 Honda Civic? I
mean, perhaps that is part of the fun, but also, like, I guess you have to seek that out. You can always get shanked in the back of a Honda Civic. There's nothing saying that you can't do that. It's like the Airbud rule, basically.
I bet there is a rule saying you can't get shanked in the back of a 1985 Honda Civic.
I guess it's probably like assault, I think, is the crime there.
No, that's you can't shank, but you can always be shanked.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, like, if there's an illegal market, that means it's operated by criminals, and criminals have incentives to use violence to enforce their own kind of market rules. So, like, the less money we're giving over to criminals, less power and influence and violence that they're able to do.
Yay!
However, Danny did mention the Oregon example, and in fact, in this specific case, the study I found was actually about recreational marijuana legalization. And in this case, they found like significant increase in violent crime, like burglary, vehicle theft, and other property crimes.
Any theory on what's different?
I can explain it to you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Here's what happened. When the police learned that they couldn't just bust poor and homeless people just for having drugs, they basically decided it was too hard to enforce any of the laws, and they threw a little bitch fit and stopped enforcing any of the laws.
This is like the police strike.
Yeah, the quiet quitting or whatever.
Okay. So this actually didn't really have to do with marijuana legalization, except tangentially. It was more Portland police being like as shitty as their reputation.
Sorry, this was when Oregon legalized marijuana?
Yeah,
or this is more...
okay, so the whole like quiet, like their whole thing started when during the George Floyd protests, a federal court ruled that they weren't allowed to assault journalists, I think, or something. And so they basically just like lost their shit, and they're like, well, if we can't assault journalists, we just can't even do our jobs. So we're not going to do our jobs. I hope you all enjoy Mad Max Wasteland. And then things were like relatively okay, except for like petty crime kind of exploded. But mostly people don't want to rape and murder. And so they don't, even if the police aren't as enthusiastic.
Sorry, there were two separate events. So, I mean, so Phil's talking about the marijuana legalization.
It's just the
when did that happen?
Timeline overlaps.
Yeah, the timeline overlaps basically. Because like all the decriminalization stuff passed like very soon after. And so that was like another thing where they were feeling super martyred because they're
including marijuana? Like that didn't happen earlier? Or because it seemed like Phil was talking about just marijuana. Recreational cannabis legalized in 2014.
Yeah, that was the one.
Okay. So I guess that's somewhat different. I guess I thought you were talking about the like decriminalization part.
No, this is a recreational marijuana legalization, 2014. I guess.
According to ChatGPT.
I think that the fact that Trump gets to scoop up these kind of easy political wins is a pretty serious indictment of Democratic politicians. Like, you had Obama and Biden in office, and at any time they could have just done these things, these popular things that people like, that would have had like great health outcomes for the American people. And also, I probably would have reduced violent crime around the country. Now, it's not like a guarantee, and these things do come with a risk of blowback, like in the Oregon case. There's potentially a positive correlation in that specific case between violent crime and drugs. But I would say that the actual greater risk is that if you don't do it fast enough, Republicans are just going to swoop in, like Trump is doing right now, and take the easy wins for your hard work. So you got to like really rush these through, like the rescheduling, and to get them in line with the scientific consensus of, the benefits of these things, of the drugs. And the second biggest risk is that like the ways we're using these hallucinogens and THC, stuff like that, they have their main application is in mental health. And I think most people in America can agree that mental health in America is a big deal. Like, we are in a mental health crisis. It tends to be more of a right wing talking point having to do with school shooters, but still, I think that basically everyone can acknowledge that mental health is a serious issue in America. And if these drugs can be helpful for treating people's mental health ailments, then we should be doing everything in our power to get these potentially life-saving treatments into the hands of Americans. Yeah, I think it's honestly, like, just great that the Trump administration is doing this. Rare W for Big T Dog. And I don't know, trying not to be backhanded about it. Like, I honestly do like it. I want to do everything in my power to make sure that these things get done. But whatever. It's not like Trump is listening to this podcast anyways, so who cares?
This is the kind of maverick shit that we wanted him to do when, he's running as an outsider. Is like, all these political insiders won't decriminalize marijuana, and so he finally does it. That's the kind of thing that I think people were hoping for in my more generous moments when I consider Trump voters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you have a maverick moment you want to let us know about, let us know in the comments, and we'll catch you again on another ball tripping, bong cloud ripping episode of Info Hazard.